Hi babes, and welcome to Teen Glitter. Welcome back. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Evelina, better known as Ivy of the Les Vixens. I'm a lesbian burlesque performer, and I've spent my entire career learning how to own my body, my identity, my sexuality, my sensuality, and to empower others to do the same. On this podcast, I spill the tea and give you all that gay girl glitter on how to live a more peaceful, productive, and pretty life. I am so happy you're here. I cannot believe we've made it to the third episode. Thank you so much if you listened to the first and second. Also, I did like a soft launch. I spilled the beans a little bit in my story about this podcast happening, and you guys, the reaction made me so happy. I got so freaking pumped. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much for being here. And it's Pride Month. By the time you listen to this, it's the last 2 days of Pride Month. I don't know, maybe you're even listening to this in July, August, or maybe you're well into September. Maybe it's Christmas time. Merry Christmas if you're listening to this in Christmas time. I was going to say that Pride Month is the best time of year, but honestly, Christmas is, so don't fight me on that. You will lose. Welcome to this episode. We are going to be talking about that thing that queer people have to do that straight people don't, and that is coming out. Coming out to ourselves, coming out to the people in our lives, and oftentimes we have to come out again and again and again, and that's annoying as fuck. I wish we all could just exist. However, I do think, honestly, that the fact that we all have a coming out story, our stories are all different, but the fact that this is something that we all share on our journeys, it's something that unites us. Some of them are traumatic, some of them are dramatic, some of them are painful, some of them are wonderful, some of them are full of relief and joy and happiness, and some are very painful, but these stories are important. They are a gay milestone. Coming out to yourself is fucking huge. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about coming out to yourself, and we're also going to talk about coming out to people in your life. On the last episode, I shared my coming out story, which I'm very grateful for. It was not traumatic. I felt very, very comfortable early on with being a gay person, and I've owned it so hard, and I think that that has given me so much freedom in life, and I wish that for everyone. Being a queer burlesque performer, running an all-queer burlesque troupe, being a professional gay myself, and being immersed in the LGBTQ plus community, the LGBTQ community, I have gained over the years an encyclopedic knowledge of coming out because I've been a witness to many, many coming outs. I have been a confidant for a lot of baby gays and vixens and random queer strangers on the internet and in real life. I've spoken to a lot of queer people. I've heard a lot of queer stories. I've talked to parents of queer kids. I've talked to queer parents and was talking to the barista at Starbucks today, this adorable gay boy. Hi, Steven. And I was telling him about this podcast, and he was telling me part of his coming out story is thanks to his Find My iPhone. He may never have come out to his family if they hadn't seen that he was at a gay bar. Thank you, Find My iPhone, for outing him, but it ended up working out really well for him. He had a great coming out story. So today we're going to be talking about all of that. I want to share my insights and my advice, the ins and outs of coming out, if you will. I want to preface this by saying that while we all have that coming out story, we all have a coming out story, all of our stories are different. So I want you to take from this episode what feels right and comfortable for you, what fits you, what helps you. Your story is your own, and I hope that what I share today can maybe help you along that journey, find some comfort, some acceptance, some love, maybe even some queer joy, get that inner peace, baby. And I want you to continue to lean in to your truest, most authentic self, because there's nothing in this life that is worth it if you are not living your truth. And if you are struggling in any way with your identity, with coming out to the people in your life, this episode is for you. And this episode is especially for the girl who came up to me at my gig last week, which I can't do math. I don't know how many weeks it'll be since then. But anyway, I'm going to set the scene for you guys. So I was performing as a pirate. Start there. I was performing as a pirate, and I'd finished my performance, and I was sitting on the edge of the stage taking pictures with some people. Visualize this. I am in a pirate hat and not much else. Humidity had hit, and my pasties were trying to walk the plank. So I'm hanging on to my pasties for dear life. I'm sitting on the edge of the stage in a pirate hat, taking pictures with people, and this wonderful sweet angel baby came up to me and hugged me and took a picture with me and was, poor thing, yelling over the music spilling her guts about the fact that she had recently realized she was not straight, and yet she's married to a man. Life got real complex real quick, and so I was also yelling over the music, trying to give her some comfort and some love and some encouragement. And I actually spilled the beans about this podcast to her. I hadn't yet announced it anywhere other than a few of my close friends. So I told her, hey, listen, like, I'm starting a podcast. We're going to be talking about gay shit. My third episode is going to be about coming out, and I want you to give yourself grace and space and time, and you've got this. Everything's going to be fine. So this episode is for you, baby, and also to anyone who may need it. Coming out can be the most like painful, confusing, and complex thing that we do on our journeys. No one grows up thinking they're going to be gay. And for many, it does cause a lot of distress and pain because of the society in which we live. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance. We exist in a society that assumes heteronormativity and then also vilifies anyone who deviates from that. So shit is hard out here, and there's a lot of internalized homophobia and shame that comes along with our journeys. And my next episode will be about internalized homophobia and all my advice there. So we're going to delve deeper into that in another episode. I'm touching on it now, and we'll probably touch on it a little bit more throughout this particular episode, but we're going to get real in depth on internalized homophobia, religious trauma, and shame in the next one. Man, that sounds delightful, doesn't it? Sounds like a really light episode. So I hope you'll join me for that one. The internalized homophobia, it does run deep. Then after you figure out that you are gay or bi or pan or lesbian or trans or whatever it may be, then you got to come out to the people in your life. And man, fuck that, because like, who knows how they're going to react. And the thing about this is that it's not just the fear that someone is going to lash out in anger or disown us or kick us out or do any of those things. Don't you fucking dare jump on my computer, Fenton. I see you. Sorry. My cat, he was eyeing up the situation. He's going to go eat a little snack. So if you hear some crunching, it's Fenton. So it's not even necessarily the fear that someone is going to disown us, kick us out, lash out in anger, even though that does happen more than my heart can take. It is the thought, the feeling that these people who are the closest to us in our lives, our friends, our families, our parents, are going to view us differently, that they will love us less. The idea that someone is... Okay, we're already crying, third episode in. It's the idea that someone will see us as a different person than we were 2 seconds ago before we told them what it took us years to discover ourselves. I think that is one of the most heartbreaking things about coming out, is the fear that we will no longer be seen as normal or as loved, or that we won't be taken care of, valued, seen as worthy, which we are. We absolutely fucking are. Coming out is difficult for a million reasons. We all have our coming out triumphs and heartaches, but living your truth and living authentically is the best thing that you can do. So in honor of Pride Month, and because so many of you ask me about coming out in general, that's what we're talking about today. So let's start with coming out to yourself, boys and girls, theys and bays, thems and femmes, and whoever else is figuring it the fuck out. We all grew up in a heteronormative society, and what that means is that we live in a society that assumes straightness, manufactures messaging from birth that ingrain in us the idea that we will be straight, that is the only option, that any deviation from heteronormativity is villainized. Some of us have even been told that we will burn in hell for eternity for deviating from this. It goes so much deeper than people can even imagine. Our stories are written for us before we're even born, without our consent. The messaging is so ingrained within us, from the way our parents speak to pop culture, to religion, to our friend circles, and on and goes. It's not even something that's conscious. Our brains are literally programmed to a default of heteronormativity before your parents even had their gender reveal party. It's no wonder so many people struggle with coming out and why it's so confusing, right? Like, even I assumed that I was bisexual for a certain amount of times. Realizing I'm a lesbian was literally removing the idea of ever being with a man again, and that was so ingrained within me. I'm a woman, I must find men attractive, I must date them, I must breed with them, etc. God, that sounds awful. Anyway, it's such a mindfuck to be a gay person growing up in a heteronormative society, because literally everything is aligned with that heteronormative narrative. And breaking away from that is breaking away from the tribe, which is incredibly scary for our little lizard brain to not be with the tribe. Like, that's survival. It's all these things. Don't you, Fenton, I swear to you, that's right. Walk away. So as we're growing up and we start to feel differently than that path of straightness, when you start to feel like things are not aligned, I see you, Fenton. Oh my God. He just leapt majestically and hopefully didn't fuck anything up. Oh my God, Fenton, don't do it again. God, leave us alone. We're just trying to film a podcast. So as we start growing up and we start realizing things about ourselves that are not aligning with that heteronormative narrative, it can be such a mind fuck. Now, the actual experience of coming out is definitely on a spectrum, right? Like some people, it's easy breezy. They love their lives. They love coming out. It feels great. For some people, it's an intense struggle. If I had it my way, no one would ever struggle with coming out. They'd realize they were gay. It would feel fucking fantastic. There would be no struggle, no strife, just like gay sex, happiness, fabulous fashion. All cats and dogs would be adopted and I'd ride to work on a unicorn and life would be wonderful. But that's not the way life happens right now. So it can even take a while to even figure out what's happening. It might not be this like immediate epiphany, like, oh my God, I'm gay. It might be a slow process that evolves as you go along. Like for me, for example, like I said before and told you in my coming out story, when I first came out, I'd assumed bisexuality simply because of heteronormativity. Like for me, that was still part of the heteronormative narrative that as a woman, I should find and want to date men. And turns out, no, that's not the case. I am a lesbian. I do not want to date men. Bisexuality was not actually my final destination. Bisexuality is definitely a very, very valid orientation. That has nothing to do with heteronormativity. Bisexuality is literally just what it is. But for me, I evolved. Like I tried that out and that was still not for me. That still didn't feel quite right. Neither did pansexual. So lesbian was where I landed, where home was. So these journeys that people are on, there's often a struggle, even for me. Like I am so happy to be a lesbian and it was so clear to me that that's what I should be, but it still took me a while to get there. And sometimes it won't make sense until you fall in love. Sometimes it won't make sense until you meet someone who makes you go, oh my God, Johnson, I don't think I'm straight. For me, it was when I was 18 and I first met my first girlfriend. I was like, what the fuck is this? But some of you might even know that you're gay well before you even hit high school and be totally cool with it. Some of you might know you're gay before high school and that might be the worst thing that you feel could ever happen to you. Maybe you start to realize that your obsession with women is actually attraction and not just extreme admiration and best friendship. It is a journey is what I'm trying to say here, because however you get to the point of realizing that you are not straight, and no matter where you fall on the spectrum of emotions, whether you got there fast or slow, whether you're sad or happy, confused or relieved, once you start questioning and realize you're not straight, the biggest thing that you have to do for yourself is going to be giving yourself time, patience, grace, and space. You don't choose to be gay, but you can choose to accept it, to be kind to yourself as you go along this journey. Not enough queer people take the time to allow a journey, to allow themselves to feel how they're feeling without judgment. And that is the advice that I'm going to beg of you, is that as you are going on this journey, even if you think that you're a lesbian, but later you realize, no, actually bisexuality is where I'm falling at this point in my life, whatever the case may be, because you may not land somewhere and stay there your whole life. So coming out can be a lifelong process. Hate to break it to you, because that is a possibility. And through that process, through that journey, being able to give yourself grace and space in those moments of uncertainty and as you flow and grow is going to be so fucking good for you and so good for your mental health. And there's enough going against you in the world right now. The world is tough out there. It can be very tough out there. So why be tough on yourself? If you can't be a home for yourself, do your best to get there. Be a safe space for you. That brings me to another thing, is find safe spaces. Surround yourself with queer people. Follow queer content creators. Go to queer spaces. And for me, that really helped a lot with realizing that, oh shit, these are just people who are peopling, living, laughing, loving, fucking fighting. People are just literally existing. They're not doing anything wrong. Seeing people who were happy, who were living out loud, who were making out, doing the best, dancing dirty, like doing all the things. It was like, a revolution. It made me feel so safe and comfortable. And so finding that is huge in a coming out story, finding that community. Because even if you're not ready to accept it for yourself yet, I just want to encourage you to go out there and see it in action. And because that takes away some of the fear, takes away some of the uncertainty. Podcasts like this one, as I'm sitting here pontificating and I am gay as fuck and I'm just out here existing and creating and living and all those things. I'm a weirdo, but like I'm not weird, I'm not bad, I'm not gross. I'm not any of those things that, society may make us think we are, There's a lot of deprogramming that has to happen. You can do it alone, but also get out there and surround yourself with queer people. You don't have to do it all the time, but it's pretty great. And you can start seeing the diversity and the perspectives, and you start to feel less alone. And I think a lot of people who come out feel hella fucking alone. And I just don't want that for you. I don't think it's necessary. You don't have to feel alone. You're not alone. And there's more of us than you think, and we are here for you. Being surrounded by queer culture can help you see that it's not this awful, scary, horrible thing that has happened to you. It can actually be the best thing that's ever happened to you, which I feel being a lesbian, being gay, is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I do not want to be straight. If gay was a choice, I would choose gay. It's not a choice, but if it was, I would choose gay. Like, have you seen women? I rest my case, Your Honor. So as you're coming out, like, don't worry so much about the minutia of labels, of like, am I femme? Am I masc? Am I like what? That comes with time. That like develops. You may feel like you need to dress a certain way or act a certain way. You don't. And on another episode of this podcast, we will be talking about femmes, masks, bottoms, tops, and the queer sexual and fashion dynamics that come into play. So stick around for that one. It's going to be a good one. But don't feel like you have to fit a mold as you're coming out. And I think that is something that is super valuable to hear. And I don't think enough people talk about it, is that you can be gay in whatever way you are. You don't have to be gay in a way that suits heteronormativity, because I think that's another thing. Good God, she's on a roll. Heteronormativity also pushes stereotypes for the outliers, for whoever does not align with them. Heteronormativity wants lesbians to not look femme. This is a theory I have, because then they can't tell that we're gay and they can't, rope us off, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like metaphorically. I think that a lot of times when we don't adhere to the heteronormative idea of what a gay person looks like, there's cognitive dissonance there and the society doesn't like it, yada, yada. And so like a lot of people come out, think they have to cut their hair off and they have to dress masks. You don't. Or on the reverse side, they felt like they had to be femme their whole lives because femininity is a heteronormative role that women have to play, and heteronormativity does not own femininity or masculinity. It does not own either one of those things. But so as you come out, you might realize, hey, I don't want long hair and I don't want to wear dresses. I don't like the way it feels on my body. So when you come out, you might want to cut your hair. You might want to start dressing more masculine. It is totally up to you. What I'm saying is don't stress about it. Just start kind of leaning into what feels most right. That is the big takeaway from this coming out to yourself, is whatever feels most right for you, lean into that. I also wanted to talk about grief. As I've mentioned several times in this podcast, we don't grow up thinking we will be gay. We grow up thinking we will have a certain life that we will meet someone, we'll marry them, we'll have kids. When you come out, you can still get married, you can still have kids, you can still do all those things, but the path looks different. Sometimes deviating from this path that was set for you, or that you thought was set for you, can cause grief. Now, grief does not just have to be for the loss of a person. It can be the loss of an identity, the loss of a future path. And within that grief, there are the stages of grief. There's denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance. And none of those things have to happen. They don't happen in a linear fashion necessarily. It's not like you go from bargaining to denial straight to, they can happen all at once at the same time. Or maybe you're stuck in denial for a really long time. Maybe you're denial and anger. Maybe you're bargaining. Even once you get to acceptance, that may not also be your final state of grief, because there will be waves of denial again, waves of bargaining, while you still are accepting it. So grief is a critical part of coming out, because you have to grieve the loss of the life you thought you would have. And that is okay. I don't want anyone to feel like that is abnormal. I don't want anyone to feel like, why should I be grieving of this? I didn't even really want that life. Even if you didn't want that life, even if that wasn't something that you really thought that you would be into, and coming out was like, this makes sense, you still may have some grief. So just accept that as well. And lean into that and be like, I'm bargaining right now. And I think that's kind of what I did with the bisexuality. It was a little bit of bargaining. Like I was like, okay, well, I can date women, but like, don't worry, society, I'll still date men at some point in life. Personally, like bisexuality, once again, is not that. It is not a stepping stone. Bisexuality is a valid orientation where people are attracted to men and women. That just wasn't for me. I just was still kind of stuck in an identity that wasn't fully correct for me. And I think that was part of the grief personally. Have grace for even the grief. You have to make space for it. Even if you're totally fine being gay, you may still have to grieve the fact that, like, I remember for me, she's gonna cry at this one, I think. I remember going to my cousin's wedding, and I was with my dad, and it's in Oklahoma, right? Very, go to church 3 times a week, yada, yada. And I remember watching my cousin walk down the aisle and on her dad's arm. And I realized that my dad may not have that with me. And he's not going to have the stereotypical wedding if there is a wedding in my future. Like, he's not going to have that. And I had to grieve that, because I wanted that for my dad. Oh, give me a second. So that was something that I had to grieve, was because I'm so happy being gay, but also I want things for my family. I want things to, I want them to have these experiences, and it was my dad watching, his niece walk down the aisle and knowing that I may not be able to give him that same experience. And so that, things like that will come up, man, they'll come up. So you just gotta accept it and roll with it and drink some tea or something. I don't know, journal about it or share it publicly on the internet. Like I'm doing, apparently. I will say that these waves of the grieving process, they might be pretty heavy at first, but they will subside. They're not going to pull you under, and you're not going to drown. You will survive the realization that you're gay. You will. I'm telling you right now, listen to me. Listen to your elder gay over here. You will survive, and you're going to thrive, and it's going to be beautiful and amazing, and you're going to have such an incredible community that is so ready to love you and to support you and to date you and all the things. Like any paradigm shift, it's going to take you some time to undo the indoctrination of heteronormativity. And so give yourself all the time you need to process all of these things. Focus on self-care, focus on community, focus on taking care of your mental well-being during this process. I really want you to also not just struggle during this. I feel like I've been kind of heavy here talking about a lot of sad things, but you're going to experience queer fucking joy, bro. Dude, you're going to kiss a girl for the first time if you're a lesbian. You're going to do that. How fucking cool for you to make out with a girl for the first time. I can't wait for that for you. And if you're already experiencing that, isn't it fucking great? Oh my God, it is the best thing ever when you finally come home to yourself. And if you're a gay boy and you're making out with a boy, I'm sure that's lovely as well. Maybe there's some stubble there that you're really into. Maybe if you guys rub your stubble together, they'll be sparks, I don't know. Being gay is magic. And we're part of this super cool club. Now that you've come out to yourself, now let's talk about coming out to people in your life. Buckle up. This is a doozy. For those of you who don't know how to do it, I got some advice, and some of it's a little heavy, but better safe than sorry, so let's roll with it. All right, you rolling with me? Let's go. So first and foremost, let me state the fact that you don't have to come out to anyone. You do not have to do that. You're not obligated to share with anyone your sexual identity. I am the law. I'm telling you, it's not required by law. You literally don't have to do that. But I do think that to live as full and free as you can be, coming out to people in your life can benefit that. It can make it easier, even if it's harder at first. I said in my coming out story that my first girlfriend, her name was Brittany, and talking to my dad about it, I didn't want to say Brent. I didn't want to fake it. I didn't want to come up with a name. I wanted to be able to say why the breakup I was going through was so hard, So I think coming out is worth it. I think there are some ways to do it that can make it safer and easier for everyone involved. If you're in a situation in which it could be very bad for you, I also recommend don't come out until you're in a safer position. So if you're financially dependent on your parents and they're super homophobic, maybe hold off. I advocate for waiting if you're in a current position that is not the safest and you don't need to come out just yet. I know that no one can really anticipate how someone will react to them coming out. So if you do decide to come out, let's start with your parents. If you do decide to come out with your parents, I want you to have a plan of like when, where, etc. I do think it's worth having someone on call or having someone with you and having a bag packed of essentials. Now, this might sound kind of dramatic, but I do think that it's worth it to, better safe than sorry. Have a bag packed, ready to go in case things go awry and you need to get the fuck out. I want you to make sure you have all your paperwork, your birth certificate, your passport, your license, like whatever you need. Take like the most important things. If you have a stuffed animal, if you're a gay person, you have a stuffed animal, have them packed, ready to go, and have someone with you or on call in case things go poorly with your family, with your parents. Better safe than sorry, and I'm sorry to be a bummer, but I just want you to be safe, okay? Now, coming out to your parents and to anyone, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like, it does not have to be the most perfect moment, but you do kind of have to consider like time and a place, you know what I'm saying? Just consider the audience. I always advocate for like a time when you will have their undivided attention. I wouldn't advocate coming out at a big event or coming out in a way that shocks people, like with the intention to shock. It can be an emotional time for everyone involved. I took my mom out to lunch to tell her, I took my dad on a hike to tell him. So you gauge for yourself, gauge with your family, gauge, you should know your parents and the people in your life pretty well, so you can know what would be an appropriate time and a place to talk to them about this, to share this very important thing about you with them. Another piece of advice I have is moderate your expectation. Your parents and the people in your life, they are people. They have their worldviews, they have their histories. Just like you may have needed some time to process, they may need some time to process. They may have a lot of questions. They may not know what non-binary means. They may not understand what trans means. You may need to give them better explanations, and they may have a lot of questions that you're not obligated to answer. So, gauge that for yourself, what you're comfortable answering, what you're not comfortable answering. You don't have to tell them about your sex life. You don't have to tell them anything. You can just give them basic answers. But I do think it's worth helping the people in your life better understand you. Don't expect them to have grown up on TikTok and know what non-binary means and all of those things. Be willing to answer their questions as long as they are remaining respectful. Do not put up with abuse or disrespect. Just don't. And what I mean by that is, like, that's when you have your bag packed. That's when you have your friend on your family on call, like whatever the case may be. You never, ever, 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 ever have to put up with abuse or disrespect. Okay? You hear me? You listening? But this is an emotional time, and your family's reactions may surprise you. It may hurt you. It may make you feel very sad, or they might surprise you, and it's no big deal. Like earlier, I was talking about the barista from Starbucks whose Find My Phone outed him, and his family was completely fine. But moderate your expectations. Just like we don't grow up thinking we will be gay, most parents don't grow up. Well, most parents don't grow up. Period. I mean, honestly. Anyway, most parents have an expectation for their children, and it's typically not that they'll be part of the LGBTQ plus community. Give them time and space to process as well, because this is a big thing. This is a new experience for everyone involved. They may be scared for you. I know my mom was. My mom was terrified that I was going to face homophobia and violence and all of those things. It is a reality that it is more dangerous to be a part of the LGBTQ plus community. It just is a fact. And so your family may not want that for you. And that's okay for them to want you to feel safe, but you have to live authentically. I knew what my mom's fears were, and I knew that there wasn't really much I could say to that other than, like, I know that it's more dangerous, but it's who I am. Danger is my middle name. I'm a lesbian. I'm living on the edge. Little did my mom know that I was going to be a gay superhero and I was going to be just fine, but she still had those concerns. And some people in your life may also worry for you. And just have compassion for that. Just like you have compassion for yourself, have compassion for what your family and your friends and the people you're expressing this part of yourself to. Have compassion for their fears, their worries, their anxieties, their worldviews, the society in which they grew up is the same one in which we grew up, so we understand how heteronormative it is and how much of a shock it can be if someone in your life comes out. Hopefully your parents will just be like, yeah, honey, I knew. They're just super supportive. But whatever their response is, be patient with them. It's not their job to see things your way right out the gate. I would also recommend giving them time. I've seen it time and time again. Families, parents, friends who had a poor reaction at the start, down the line, they are buying your girlfriend matching Christmas pajamas, okay? So like, give it time, have hope. Do your family the service and your friends of giving them the same grace and space you gave yourself. Be willing to educate. Your identity might be so much more niche and specific than the average bear, than the average, the average bear. I meant that as a gay man, or the average lesbian. You may not fit this mold of homosexuality that they are more familiar with, right? So like, be willing to educate. You're not obligated to do so, but I would recommend like being open to that. If your family or friends do not accept you, are not willing to respect your pronouns, your relationships, all of those things, you don't have to have them in your life. It's a harsh thing to say. I've said give them time. I've said let them process all of those things. And if those things happen and they're still not respecting your relationships or your pronouns or your identity or any of those things, then I don't think you have to keep these people in your life. Remember that. It is your life, your choices. You get to curate the people in your life. And it's hard and it's sad, but you will survive. You have so many more chosen family out there who are ready to love you and ready to support you. I know people who have had to go no contact with their families or with certain friends. It's sad, but man, do they thrive once they're out of that situation and once they're no longer letting that person hurt them. Some people do come around, some people never do. And that's a fact of life. And I just really wanted to make that clear, that you do not have to keep people in your life who do not respect your queerness, who do not respect your pronouns. Like, give them the time and space to process, have compassion for them, and have compassion for yourself. But don't allow yourself to stay in situations that make you feel like shit. Recognize that their response is about them. It's not about you. You are worthy. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of respect. You are worthy of living your truth. You are worthy of safe spaces. You are worthy of being loved and to love and to have support. You are who you have always been, and that does not change. So whether you choose to come out to people in your life or don't, you are still you. You also have a whole community out there who is ready to love and support you. You know, I always say at Girl the Party on Saturdays, like, if your family doesn't welcome you, this is your home away from home, and I'm your daddy, baby. So wherever you are in your journey, whether coming out to yourself right now, whether you done been out, whether you are realizing, hey, the label that I gave myself when I first came out no longer fits correctly, you have to give yourself compassion and love and time and patience. You just have to, because I'm telling you to. I really want being queer to not be something that is so painful and so confusing and so hurtful. I do know that it is and it can be, but I don't think it necessarily has to remain that way. It can start off that way, but if you give yourself the time and the space and the love and the community and the support, it won't be as harmful to your mental well-being as it could be. Don't isolate yourself. I think community is so important. Finding people who love and support you. If your family doesn't, find some chosen family. You will create it. I mean, that is such a huge part of queer culture, is chosen family. People who get it, people who love you for exactly who you are. I do. I love you for exactly who you are, and I've been a part of a lot of your coming outs. I truly have. I might have even been the reason that some of you came out, and I love that. And I hope that as your gay awakening that I have done you justice. I hope this episode helped you in some way. I hope you feel less alone. I hope you feel loved and supported and sexy as a motherfucker, because gay people are sexy as motherfuckers. I am going to wrap this up. I still don't know how I'm going to end these other than to say be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Oh yeah, follow me on social media. Leave a nice review of this podcast if you're enjoying it. If you're not, keep listening, but don't leave any mean reviews, okay? Check out the website, teenglitter.com. Hopefully that'll be up by this point. Follow me on social media, TikTok, Instagram. Love you so much. I'm so happy for you to be on this journey with you. Thank you for being part of my life, part of my journey, part of this podcast. I hope you liked this one. I hope the video looks better than the first two. I'm really trying to figure it out. Our next topic is going to be kind of internalized homophobia and religious shame. That sounds, I'm not selling it. Maybe I don't know. I'll do something to lighten it up. So don't feel like it's going to be the heaviest thing of all time. But if you are struggling with those things, I think it'll be worth a listen. And then we're going to talk about sex with girls in another episode. I don't have any experience with sex with boys, so if you're looking for that, wrong podcast. And yeah, okay. Have a beautiful day. Happy Pride Month. Merry Christmas if you're listening to this in December. We'll see you next time. Okay, I love you. Get out of here. Go have a beautiful day. Goodbye.